we'll go straight to number one. One is apologies or substitutes.
Sorry, convener. Apologies from Councillor Derek Wan.
The substitute should be Councillor Brown.
He's not in the meeting.
Good start. Okay, I'll go straight to declarations of interest. Councillor Duff.
Item 9, I'm a council appointed director of Angus Alive, and this was a common good award to Angus Alive. So I excused myself from that decision making process. So I guess I should leave the meeting while you actually agree that, although it shouldn't take very long, I wouldn't think.
No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Devine.
Well, I'm also an Angus Alive board member, and I obviously wasn't involved at all with the decision taking. I think it seems to come back in again. Definitely wouldn't vote if there was a vote on it. So I wonder if that's okay, Karen.
I think it's okay, Karen. What do you think?
Well, I think that's fine. If it's the Councillor Devine's decision, what she.
Okay.
What about the Councillor Duff? Would you do the same, Councillor Duff?
Well, I mean, we normally leave if we've declared an interest. Obviously, it's not a personal financial interest, but yeah, I'm quite happy if we'll say nothing and we'll let you get on with it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine by me. Councillor King.
Yeah, unmute. Yes, convener. It's item 11, report R270/2106. I'm the retiring treasurer for the Abbey Theatre Club. I done a handover yet, and it's still on my declarations of interest that I'm the treasurer. So it's not a direct financial interest, really the fact that the theatre has a discounted rental for a piece of ground to access the back gate of the theatre. I'll remain in the meeting and I'll take part in the vote if there is a vote. Okay.
Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, agenda item number 6, report 265/21, received a grant as per the COVID funding for taxi drivers. So therefore, I'll not participate in that discussion and leave the room. And also agenda item number 10, report 269/21, in the respect that a friend of mine has shown an interest in a piece of land that this item relates to. So I'll leave the room as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Miles.
Yes, just item 12, Tayside contracts, but there's a dispensation on that, but just for completeness, I'll declare. Thank you.
Okay.
I will take part.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. Item 12 also, report number 271/21, as a council appointed member of Tayside contracts, I'll declare an interest, but I'll stay and take part in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salmond.
Yeah, it's item 10, report number 269/21, non-financial interest. The applicant for the lease contacted myself to seek advice on how they could approach the council at the start of the process to apply for the lease. So I just provided the contact details of the officer, and that's all that I did. So I'm happy to take part in the meeting and vote if required.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmond. Is there anybody? Councillor Sturrock.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Item 10 controls the common good surplus properties. About 18 months or so ago, I was aware of the current lessee of the old Croft Road bowling green. I have had no contact with her since, so I don't know her present intentions at all. But I have to declare my wife is a regular attendance at their coffee shop that they have on the bowling green. So I believe I can still take part in any discussion on this matter.
That's fine. Thanks, Councillor Sturrock. I don't see anybody else. Have I missed anybody, Karen?
No, there's no hands up.
Okay, I don't know how it seems to be jumping up and down itself. for some reason today. Karen, if you could just keep me right, because I haven't written on. So if we need to stop right before the item starts, if you could just give me a prompt, somebody may have to leave the meeting. That would be good of you. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay, we'll go to item 3. That's the minutes of the previous meeting, including the note. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the information report for the period 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. It's on page 13. The report is by the Director of Finance, but I would also like to give thanks to Graham Ritchie. When I read the report, considering the fact that we had such a torrid time with COVID, the fantastic achievement of our staff, they certainly need to be commended, and that's on page 16 of the report. And I'm sure we'll all agree with that. So I'm just going to go straight to, are there any questions? Councillor King, is it a question?
Yes, it's a question. Question of the Director of Finance. I'm looking at page 106. I'm noting the collection rates, and that the collection rate for 2021 was at the 31st of March. Can I ask, are the other two collection rates as at the 31st of March in each of those years, or is that the updated collection rate after a bit more has come in during 2021?
Okay, perhaps Mr. Lorimer can help.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Happy. The numbers in this is on page 14 of I think the combined papers in relation to council tax. So those figures for financial years 1920 and 1819, those are the collection rates at the end of that respective financial year. So in relation to, for example, financial year 1920, we will now have collected a bit more than the 97.4 we had at the end of that year. So that is the end of year position, but we continue to collect beyond the end of each financial year.
And the same will apply to business rates?
Yes, they're comparable figures based on at the end of each financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer.
Okay, thanks, Councillor King. I've got Councillor Miles.
Yes, like you, convener, I'd like to commend all those who managed to achieve these excellent high figures. Do we have any comparative indicators of how other councils, what collection rates are achieved in other councils? Because I would imagine these are, if not the top in Scotland, very near it.
Again, through you, convener, there was information published relatively recently, actually, I think within the last couple of months, on council tax collections across all local authorities. So I can say, I think it's in there in terms of the narrative in relation to financial year 2021, the most recent, our in-year collection at 96.9% was the third highest in Scotland. And as we've mentioned within the report, that's on the basis of actually having to collect more income than was the case for the year before. But there is those stats available on the Scottish Government website that go back for all the years of council tax, I think, since it began. So we've consistently been in the top 5 for every year of council tax in relation to collection. Thank you.
Well done.
Yep. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. My question refers to the very end of the 17 and the self-isolation support grants. I was just a little concerned about the rate of applications that were paid out for, with only about 31% of them being granted, and I just wondered if there was any particular reasons for refusal of payment of those grants.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Through you again, convener. Yeah, this scheme has been running since I think about October last year. It's had a number of iterations since that period. Anyone can apply, but they need to satisfy eligibility criteria, and they also need to provide us with evidence. So the reasons for refusal might be that the person simply isn't eligible to begin with, but they wouldn't necessarily know that, or that they've not provided the information that we require in order to be able to complete an assessment. The number for this is the position at the end of March, or up to the end of March last year. There has been a large increase in the number of self-isolation support grants, roughly since about the beginning of June, largely on the back of an increase in infection numbers. So since about May, June, up until just last week, our approval levels are above 70%. So I think that figure in the report may be influenced by a few things, people getting used to what this new scheme was, in terms of whether they're eligible or not, and perhaps people applying without understanding what the eligibility criteria are. Certainly the rates of approval have increased, and that's probably just as people have got used to the scheme. And there have been a couple of examples, a few examples where we've not been able to approve a request under this scheme, but we have been able to help out applicants with a crisis grant through the Scottish Welfare Fund. So we've not been able to help through one means, but we've found another means where somebody's eligible and we've been able to help. So a number of reasons, I think, in response to your question, Councillor Whiteside, but certainly the recent evidence is that the applications and the approval rates are much higher than they were early on. I think that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, I'll move to Councillor Salmond.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I just wanted to echo your comments and thank the staff for the assistance in the collection rate for council tax, but actually, more importantly, thank the residents of Angus for actually continuing to pay their council tax during the difficult period of COVID-19. As colleagues will know, 20% of the council budget is made up of council tax. So to keep funding our services is extremely important that the residents also keep paying their council tax. So a big thank you to the residents of Angus for supporting Angus Council through this difficult period.
Yeah, very good point, Councillor Salmond. Okay, any further questions? Okay, any comments? Okay, can we just note the report, please? Thank you. We'll go to item number 5. That's the 2021-22 final capital budget, general fund, page 18. The report's by the Director of Finance, and I'd like to thank as well the report author, Don Johnson. You've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor Duff. You're on mute, Councillor Duff.
Right, that's me now. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, thank you, Convener, on page 38. Now, I've had a brief email correspondence with Mr. Cochrane on it, but I'll ask the question anyway because I think I had a couple of supplementaries. The first question really relates to the A90 link road, and I was just wondering there because we had a project update several months ago, which was slightly problematic, I would think, and I think we were expecting a report status, and I just wondered where we were on that one. I think maybe ask that question of Mr. Cochrane initially.
Yeah, not a problem. Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. As you say, the A90 link is challenging in terms of the options that we're still working through. And as you noted, we've briefed members on some of those routes and the possible solutions, but also some of the possible problems that they had brought in. We are currently looking to consult with businesses around Montrose in terms of their need for infrastructure to gain a better understanding and greater support for the potential routes. And we'll come back to committee in due course on that.
Yeah, does that indicate that we are now having doubts about whether there is support within the business community to justify the project?
I think of making sure we're evidencing the support for the alternative options given that there are, as you say, as you're aware, sorry, a number of options that we've been looking at through the consultants. We're looking to make sure we have the support from the businesses for those routes that we're looking at as we shift through those varying routes.
And presumably we'll get a report at some point in the near future.
We will indeed. The report before you today is looking at the funding profile, and the project itself will be reported in due course.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Mr. Cochrane. The second question really was just on the coastal protection, and obviously this is a topical one with the Dynamic Coast 2 launch on Friday. So, I mean, we've got so this is being funded under the line Montrose Coastal Protection Preliminary Works. And then there's the assumption there that we're going to get 80% grant from Scottish Government. That do the sort of short-term temporary work that was discussed, the immediate filling of dunes, and then potentially further work funded out of that lump of money.
Thank you through yourself, convener. Yes, indeed, the budget provision that we've made is aligned to the work that Dynamic Coast has been doing in conjunction with, obviously, with ourselves and our representation on the Dynamic Coast group. We are looking at, as you've alluded to, about reinstating and re-nourishing the dunes, and that's the initial proposals, but we would also be looking at re-nourishment of the beach itself, and that's both the more substantial financial costs and also the more substantial long-term project.
And if I could be permitted another supplementary, convener.
Yeah, on you go.
The line below, the flood risk management, that is a sort of general sort of funding stream for sort of Cross Angus projects. Is that correct?
In terms of the 192,000, do you mean?
No, that's the 15 million with
the
12
15 million.
Scottish
Yes, it is.
Government.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's not specific to Montrose.
No.
No, that's grand. Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. My question relates to the reduced amount of borrowing in comparison to budget, which is a common theme year on year. The report states that this will have a neutral impact over 5 years, but I just wanted to ask if we have got the capacity to catch up with the capital investment in Angus over that time and whether that's realistic.
Mr. Lorimer, can you help here?
Like, yeah, might be a double act between myself and Mr. Cochrane, convener on we would hope to catch up. Obviously, the pandemic has had a significant impact on both the council staff and indeed contractors. So what we're saying in this report is that we expect to catch up. So actually, it would be no worse than neutral, but we're able to reach that level of catch up. The financial plan changes every year as part of our annual review of our capital budget. So sometimes that can mean that projects are moving forward or backwards, depending on the priorities are. So it's always a bit short in time in relation to what we expect to achieve over the period. But I think it will be, knowing what we know currently about market conditions, some of the supply chain issues, etc. It will be a bit challenging to catch up some of that. What we have in terms of this report of members today is what we think is a realistic capital programme for financial year 2021-22, and we'll be reassessing the one of those years when we set the 22-23 capital budget. So it's always a challenge if you have slippage to, but we're certainly doing our level best to do that. I don't know whether Mr. Cochrane wants to say any more about some of the challenges of market conditions, etc., as they affect the capital programme, but answers the initial part of the question.
Yeah.
Councillor White.
Right. Thanks for that, Mr. Lorimer. We will go to Ian Cochrane. I must admit, right, a bit of yours sounded foreign to me, but right, you seem to be breaking up a wee bit there. But I hope everybody got the gist of that. Mr. Cochrane, do you want to come in?
Thanks, and yes, thanks to Mr. Larimer, and I hope I'm not repeating what he was saying when it was breaking up. Yeah, obviously through the review of the capital plan and through the work of the capital plan monitoring group, we have looked to ensure that we've got a plan that is realistic in terms of what we can deliver this year, and therefore influence the borrowing that we are going to do. We are looking and we are seeing some impact on our contractors from quite a variety of issues in terms of availability of some materials, availability of some contractors in terms that they have got a substantial amount of work, and indeed still ongoing impact of COVID. We're hearing of isolation requirements, etc., which is still impacting on the various workforces. So I think we've looked to develop the capital plan to we've continued to keep it ambitious, but we're also minded that if we are able to accelerate any of the works which we will attempt to do, that we can draw down money from future years into this year if that is a requirement. And as I say, that's been a subject of discussion at the CPMG group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Want to move on to Councillor Miles?
Yes, thank you, Convener. My question is also about the link road between the A90 and Montrose. With the recent announcement that the Scottish Government is now incorporating the Greens in government and their negativity towards upgrade and roads upgrade, is there any concerns you have that this might not eventually happen? I know there's a lot of concerns about other roads that might not be upgraded as was proposed.
Mr. Cochrane?
Through yourself, Convener, I think it's early days at the moment to understand the impact that may bring. Certainly, new road construction is always challenging in terms of making sure that we do the environmental analysis and everything that goes with it. So we'll continue to work in that direction. And obviously, as and when there's any change to that, we'll be reporting that to committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sturrock?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, my questions will be to Mr. Cochrane as well. I note sort of Councillor Miles' comment towards the Green, but this is we'll wait and see. But there are no great economic development spokespeople. Just regarding the A90 itself, I'm glad to hear that there's another report to come back to committee, because I was just beginning to wonder if maybe the enthusiasm for completing such a link road was starting to wane somewhat. So, but I'm glad to hear that it sounds as if it's going to go ahead. My second point is relating to coastal protection. Now, we were all at the meeting on Friday afternoon with the Cabinet Secretary and all the various stakeholders. I noticed that Montrose Port Authority were not there, and I thought they would have been a stakeholder. Can you answer why the MPA were not invited?
Thank you, Councillor Sturrock. I think, as you're aware, the audience is relatively limited by wanting to maintain COVID compliance as far as we could. Certainly, Montrose Port are a stakeholder in the discussions in terms of both the future works and obviously the impact and their processes within the port. So I'd like to reassure you that they are one of our stakeholders in those discussions, but they weren't at the event, which, as you're aware, was relatively low numbers.
Yeah, because I was been hearing there's an alternative grouping on this actual topic, so I don't know how the one we were at in alternative groups coincide as far as the council are concerned.
I'm not aware of a second group, Councillor. So
that's what I heard this morning. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Thank you. My question will be for Mr. Lorimer, please. But first, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased with, and as a member of the Capital Projects Monitoring Group, as indeed is of course, Councillor Duff, I'm very pleased with the work that's going on to try and catch up on the capital programme after the COVID delays, and congratulate officers on that. In general, the control of our borrowing is good, especially at a time with many of the respected economic experts are predicting a time of long-running increase in interest rates. But I would like to ask Mr. Lorimer if he is content with the borrowing capacity that he has at the moment. I should say the funding capacity that he has at the moment to deliver the capital programme.
Yeah, thanks again through you, convener. Yeah, no concerns around that. When we agreed, the council agreed the treasury management strategy for the current financial year. We projected what we thought we'd need in terms of capital borrowing, so we're well within those parameters. We are having to keep a little bit of an eye, as we always do, actually, in terms of where interest rates may be heading. Our primary source of borrowing is the Public Works Loans Board. Now, there's a number of things can affect the rates that apply from that loans, but we just need to keep an eye on the kind of direction of travel there to time our borrowing well before interest rates does look like interest rates might begin be seeing the start of a sort of slow and gradual rise potentially. Around that, so we're just keeping an eye on that, so that we borrow when we need to, but not before that. But I have no concerns about our capacity to borrow, and we assessed back in March the overall affordability of our capital programme, including our borrowing for that programme. So we're okay in that regard. Thank you.
Convener, thank Mr. Lorimer for that. Thank you.
You, Councillor Salmond. You're on mute.
Sorry, convener, I want to make a comment. I'll be a comment, Chair.
No, I'm just right. Is there any further questions? Don't see any. Okay, so we'll go to comments. Councillor Salmond.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the Montrose Coastal Protection as well, which obviously we had a visit from the Cabinet Secretary to Montrose on Friday, which the 4 local members attended. It was obviously the launch of Dynamic Coast 2. Cabinet Secretary chose to visit Montrose for that launch, and I'm hoping that's a positive sign for future government investment in this project. Montrose is one of the 5 significant sites in Scotland that are being looked at here. So let's hope the Cabinet Secretary saw what's actually needing to be done in the Montrose to deal with coastal erosion, and that when it comes to providing some extra money for these projects, Montrose is the top project to be funded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmond. Any further comments? No further comments? Okay, you've got the recommendations. 1 A is notes, B approves, C approves, and D notes. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item 6. That's the COVID 2020-21, page 54. Report by Director of Finance, and I'd just like to say thanks to Jill Rennie, the team leader. You've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? No questions. Any comments? Okay, I'll just make one comment. I'd just like to congratulate all who have been involved for their exemplary work. I think the report speaks for itself. The recommendation is just one, and that's to note. Is the report agreed? Okay, thank you. Item 7 is the COVID-19 funding, discretionary funding project approvals. page 62. Report by Director of Finance, and I'd like to thank Victoria Gibbons. You've got the recommendation. Any questions? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. It was just a quick question. I was hoping to get an update on the future projects coming through, because we're not really being asked to approve a lot of spend in this report, but I know that there's probably some other projects in the pipeline, so just an update for committee would be useful.
Okay. Who can help me here?
I can come in on that one, convener.
Yes, that night. Thank you, Mr. Lorimer.
Yeah, so I think this is the third tranche of applications that we've brought. I think some of them have actually come to full council, just depending on the timing. So we're still receiving applications for funding and going through those. There are a number, another 4 or 5, I think, in the pipeline, which we would bring. We expect to bring in the next cycle. As you'll see from this report, there's still, assuming the report proposals are agreed, there's still over 400,000 available, and we're looking to use that to support a number of projects. So we'll bring those, at least the next tranche of proposals, to the next meeting of this committee convener, and there's a number of more substantial proposals within that grouping that the grants assessment panel have been going through. So more to come on this one in terms of using that funding to support Angus communities and different groups looking for support. Thank you.
Okay, does that help, Councillor Whiteside?
Yeah, that's great. Just reassurance that the funding is being used where it's needed. Thanks.
Super, thank you. Councillor Devine.
As convener, just the Angus Council Communities Team Award. There was a feeling in our group that we could have done with a wee bit more information about this. I know that the Forfar Community Cafe does incredibly well, and there's lots of activities and everything else, but most people maybe don't know that, and I certainly don't know what happens in our growth. There's also a feeling of, a bit like Councillor Whiteside is saying, is there plans to roll these out to other places as well? If you could just give us a bit more information about what these cafes do, would be helpful.
Okay, right. Well, I'm not sure either, to be quite honest, Councillor Devine. Who can help me here? I thought it would be you, Alison.
Thank you. I'd be happy to bring back some more detail about both the Forfar and the Arbroath Community Cafes, provide a bit more information on that from the team, so I can circulate that after the meeting.
Okay, can I help, Councillor Devine?
Yeah. I mean, I do know that the one in Forfar works through, and they've had a lot of young people there, and families go along. They can have food at a very reduced price, and there are lots of activities indoor and outdoors. So I would imagine the same kind of thing is going on in our growth, but it's just for other councillors who don't know about these things. It would be helpful to have it in the report.
Yeah.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you, Councillor Devine. Okay, that was more a question, but any comments? Any further comments? No. Okay. I'd just like to say again, thanks to all who have been involved right in this. We've got the one recommendation. It's one approve. Is that agreed? Oh, sorry, Councillor Macmillan Douglas, you want to come in? You're on mute, Angus. My favourite words to you.
They're normally an order, convener. They're not a question. I just wanted to do what you've just done, in fact, which was to congratulate all officers who have been working to make this money available in the most efficient way. And I'm particularly, because of my personal experience, I'm particularly struck by the the business support grant administration, where people have been moved, as we've said before, but the people have been moved off their normal jobs to administer these grants, and it's been done superbly. And I just wanted to put on record our thanks for that. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments? No. So, right, as I say, recommendations 1, approve. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We go to number 8.
Convener, it's Karen here. We tried to contact Councillor Stewart to come back into the meeting, but he's actually not joined as yet, so I'm not too sure if he's got any technical issues at the moment, but he has been asked to rejoin the meeting, but he's not in the meeting, so it was just to flag that up.
Okay, just let me know, Karen, if you when he comes in. Can we keep trying to get him, please?
Yeah, we've continued to do that. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you. Okay, number 8, Rural Communities Testing Change Fund, page 71. The report's by Alison Smith. Got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. I just thought it would be quite useful for committee to get a bit more information from possibly Alison. I mean, it's a new initiative, and it'd be good to hear how it's replacing the LEADER programme, which we've had really good funding from the EU from in the past. So I don't know whether the rest of the committee would also like a little bit more information.
Well, I must say I've got down on my notes, Alison to speak ? So I did expect that. I remember when I looked at the pre-agenda, I said Rural Communities Testing Change Fund. What on earth's that? So Alison, do you want to maybe give us a wee update?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. So as the paper sets out, we've obviously been Angus Council has been the accountable body, the host of the LEADER programme through 2 programme periods actually. And we have just wound up in March the programme, the last LEADER programme. Some other areas, local action group areas as they're known, so Angus is a local action group area, are continuing to finalise projects and still have some staff in place. But actually in Angus we managed to spend virtually most of our projects had completed. And we're really just in the process of winding up that old programme. Our staff have moved on to new posts, which was a really successful outcome in terms of spending the money that was allocated. However, Scottish Government were continuing to look at what a future fund may look like and how we might continue some of the successful approach which LEADER about, that sort of community-led engagement in terms of projects. And the whole local action group has always been a partnership of private sector, public sector and third sector. So it's been innovative, and we've been working in that way for over 20 years in Angus. Local people making decisions on local projects in Angus. Therefore, there was a desire to continue that approach, but without a new pot of money being in place. So whereas before we would bid for a new programme and set up the whole programme, we're in a position where there is this test of change fund, which we were able to bid with. So as a council, we've been working with some of the former members of the local action group in Angus, so individuals and organisations who are still interested in seeing that rural development and what that might look like. And we put in a bid to Scottish Government for some funding to trial this, to trial some tests of change, to look at perhaps different ways of working, different projects, what that might look like up to March 2021 would be. There would be a larger pot of fund that we'd be able to bid for. However, the group we were working with is not constituted. It never has been. As I say, Angus Council has always been the banker. We've sort of held the financial and the risk around the programme and acted in that capacity. And therefore, the group had asked if we would be willing to sort of take responsibility for this small fund up until March 2022. Part of the work will not only be to identify projects that we can test this change over the coming months, but also to look at what formats that group could take for the future, so that we could move away from that model where Angus Council has to be the banker and the accountable body, and try and establish a group which in its own right could be constituted, perhaps social enterprise. We'll explore different models, able to bid for other funds or handle other funds. So a much more devolved model away from the council. So we'll be trying the two things in parallel. We will be looking for projects where we can test new and different ways of working with communities. It very much aligns to other activity we have on the go, such as participatory budgeting and through our community planning channels, etc. So it's about aligning some of our policy areas and also trying to establish a new format of a group so that they can then bid for larger sums of funding when they become available.
Thank you for that, Alison. That was very helpful. Councillor Whiteside, does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Right, totally agree. Councillor Devine?
Thanks, Convener Alison. The lag, the people on the lag were really quite impressive over the years, I think. Are most of them going to stay on with it, do you think? Or will there be a bit of a change?
At the moment, we have most of them have indicated an interest. We've had one or two people who have moved on, or have actually moved. Some people have retired from the organisations they've been involved in. So part of what we want to do is to look at the skills and experience and try and fill. One of the things we've always struggled with, particularly in the lag over the year, has been getting more young people involved, for example. So it's something we would be really keen to engage with other groups to try and make sure we've got as wide a representation as possible, and we don't just have a certain profile or whatever. So we get a good geographical spread of rural Angus, but we also get a sectoral as well. So it's something that we would like to look at that matrix and try and actively encourage more people to get involved.
That's good. I mean, it's good to keep the experience and the local knowledge, but absolutely younger people are vital in this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Devine, and thanks for that answer, Alison.
Convener,
Any
we've got
further? Right, we've got Councillor Hands.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. This is a question for Alison again. Alison, I was quite interested. You sort of went into the area that I was going to ask a question of in terms of how the new lag plan would coincide or work with PB. And I'm just wondering, as you're looking to develop new members of the new scheme, will there be opportunities to look at developing the specific, I suppose you could go in the localities or whatever, because I think there's a lot of skills that this new group will be looking for that I think it could be quite useful for local communities to have similar skills embedded there for the progression of participatory budgeting as well. And I suppose ultimately we need to make sure we don't complicate things for local groups, because at the end of the day, the local groups that we're hoping to apply for both schemes, they're not necessarily going to really worry about where the money's coming from, other than the fact that they can apply. And it's just to make sure that that information is known in the communities, rather than having two different routes. It would almost be quite useful to have some form of local funding and portal where the community groups can go for, because I think we're in danger of potentially complicating things where we actually need to do the reverse if we're going to enhance PB in the future.
Sorry, apologies, get my mute off. Yeah, absolutely. The experience of leader local action group is something, so in terms of the sort of what we call community-led, well developed methodology, across Europe that we've used for leader. So from very early days, we've had that partnership of public and private and third sector. And certainly as we're starting to look at PB and other funds, and each of which, you know, asks us to engage with communities to decide on where that funding is going, we need to get better at that and bring that together so that we're not constantly going out with one fund and trying to do things, you know, ad hoc and individually. So something that we've implemented this year as a trial around the PB side of things has been to set up a working group, an Angus-wide working group, who can sort of have that strategic overview of projects and how that aligns to criteria and different policy. And we've actually invited some of the former Leader Lag members to be on that group. So they've joined that. So they'll bring in their expertise from the leader approach into that sort of view and consultation on projects. And one of the other important bits, you know, as it was set out in the report there, is about trying to align all the different policy areas. Leader has kind of operated on its own, you know, it's gone down its own road to a sense away from other parts of policy. And this is the opportunity for us to make sure that that approach is really aligned with PB, with wealth, community wealth building, etc., and other sources of funding. So it's something we kind of, the timing is good for us to bring all of that together. We'll trial this from a PB point of view with the working group. And then by the time we've gone through the test of change, we'll be more ready for that for next year.
Okay, thank you for that. Does that help, Councillor Hans?
Yeah, that's we need to, for the next phase, we need to look and see how we then engage with the community groups on the ground as well, which are not going to be working on an all Angus basis. So it's great that that experience is getting shared, and you know, that's really good news to hear that. But I think it's also then we need to bring in the community groups as well and work a way of how to localise that rather than have just, you know, across Angus as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor McMillan Douglas. Is it a question or a comment? You're on mute.
It's a comment, please, convener.
Okay, have we got any further questions? No, okay, we'll go straight to you, Councillor.
Thanks, convener. I just wanted to use this opportunity really to compliment many groups across the ward I'm privileged to represent, Kirriemuir and Dean, for the fantastic work that they put in over the last week to 10 days under considerable time pressures to get a lot of participatory budgeting bids in. I don't know what the final number was, but it must have been quite substantial, quite a high proportion of the total council area, I would have thought. So I want to congratulate them on that, but also to make the point that, of course, while leader money was just UK money recycled through Brussels, in exactly the same way, participatory budgeting money is actually just taken from existing council budgets. And so we do have to be extremely careful, as I know certainly Alison is and the officers are, that we are aware that having taken money from a budget where it was presumably badly needed in the first place, it is used in a very constructive way for local communities. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Any further comments? No. Okay, we've got the recommendations. 1 is note, 2 approves, 3 delegates and 4 notes. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to number 9, and that's Common Good Funds project approvals. That's page 85. You've got the recommendations. I believe this has been agreed by 3 ward members and 1 declared an interest. Have we got any questions on it? Any comments? Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, I just agree with this. I think it's imperative that we look after the history of our towns So I have no problem supporting this at all. All I wanted to say on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Sturrock.
Yes, I agree with what Councillor said, and having had a look around the actual museum and the use of storage and what is stuck away in drawers, there's a heck of a lot of stuff that needs to be properly catalogued and stored properly, etc. So I just wonder, just speculative comment on do other museums in Angus have the same potential requirements for cataloguing and special storage? That was just a speculation.
I'm sure they do. I don't know if anybody can help me with that, but we can find out, I'm sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, we've got the recommendation. It's approve the requested funding for Montrose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Number 10, back to Montrose. Montrose Common Goods Surplus Properties, page 88. The report's by Ian Cochrane. You've got the recommendations. I believe all members agreed. Any questions? Seen any questions? Any comments? No. Okay. Got the recommendations. One is Inch Pavilion and Bowling Green is Appendix 1. 2, land at Broomfield Road, Appendix 2. 3, land at Trail Drive is Appendix 3. And 4 is note that further reports be brought. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Chair, Councillor Sturrock has his hand up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Sturrock.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Yeah, I was just wanting to mention sort of the the old Bowling Green at Croft Road. As you know, a flower pavilion, and there's a coffee shop attached to it, and it's quite well used by the local community. As I've alluded to earlier, my wife is a regular customer down there. So that the question will be that with Montrose Port taking the old, purchasing the old bus station on Rossi Island Road, I presume that they are a known actor in the possible purchase of this property going forward. So all I'm really wanting to know is, if approving this today, when will the property actually go on the market, open market for sale?
Mr. Cochrane, can you help?
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Sturrock. We'll instruct our agent Shepherds in order to market the property. The existing tenant has been made aware of today's report, so that the lease expired earlier this year and is on what is called tacit renewal. So it would be we would be time any sale finalisation along with the tenant's knowledge and understanding. Indeed, you know, it will be an open market sale, so there may be opportunities within that as well for others to come forward if they're interested in the site.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Cochrane. I'm glad that the current lessee is aware of the impending sale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've been through the recommendations. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll go to item 11. That's the peppercorn and discounted rental of council properties on page 97. Again, it's a report by Ian Cochrane. You've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor Miles?
Yeah, the peppercorn and discounted rent of council properties, although they include quite a bit of common good properties there. Are we treating the both common good and council properties the same? Are there separate regulations for common good properties? Because I dare say some of the common goods will, let's say, be less willing to lease at peppercorn rents possibly than some of the council properties. And just while I'm on, there's one of the appendices It speaks about an Edsel daycare centre, main building. Is that what's referred to as the cottage? Just clarification, please.
Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you for yourself, convener. The original 2013 policy applies to common good as well as the general fund buildings. So we've applied that policy to date when we've been looking at the lease of common good buildings. And I know that has caused some consternation with some of the common good properties in some of the areas. In terms of the Edsel property, I'll confirm to you separately that that is the cottage. I'm 90% sure, but I will absolutely confirm that to you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cochrane. Have we got any further questions? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. Just a clarification, really. We're not really being given any alternative proposals, so we're really just being asked to approve the policy as it is. And is it possible that this will be looked at in greater detail at some point in the future?
Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Whiteside. I think in the report we said what the impact of changing the discount rent would be in terms of if members were minded to alter that by 10% up or down, it would be in the order of sort of £10,000. We were reminded that this report was initiated from a discussion back in May last year around particularly the money thief property. We're minded that the policy has served us well as officers because it gives us a foundation when we're discussing rentals with potential applicants, and it also helps elected members in the sense that we have a uniform approach and that we don't have different groups asking for discounts, and indeed groups are able to compare themselves with other voluntary organisations, etc., and know that they have the same discount. So we're not actually proposing a change as officers here. Clearly, it would be up for members. As I say, we were asked to review it. We've done that, and we brought this report back to you. So it's not the intention of officers to look at changing the discount that we currently offer, and that's partly why we brought it back to you. We're conscious that 2013 report predates some elected members being involved in the council, etc. So we hope it informed that we're able to continue in terms of offering the discount to community group.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. I've got Councillor Hands.
Yeah, convener, it is a question, although I think I'd rather make it a comment because I think even if I get answer to the question, I'll still not understand it. It was just in reference to the 10% reduction costs and about £10,000. I looked at this in connection with paragraphs 5.7 and 5.8, where it tells you what the overall rental income is. The 36% of tenants that have taken up that reduction potential at this moment in time, and I seriously couldn't reconcile the figures. I looked at it time and time again. I think also looking at the appendices as well, there isn't consistency there, but we discussed this and felt that it'd be an awful lot of work to review the policy at this point, because I think there is quite a lot of inconsistency, and I think officers probably have too much other work to do right now. So it's maybe something that needs to be put on the back burner just now, but revisited. But I certainly couldn't get my head around the connection between the financial implications and the information at paragraph 5.7 and 5.8.
Thank you, Councillor Hands. Yeah, I agree. I think this will have to be revisited. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, I was going to say much the same thing. I think I would agree with Mr. Cochrane. I think it's good to have a uniform discount across the council area so that one group doesn't play off another group, etc., or one town against another. I think that's sensible. I'm sure local members are aware of lots of anomalies, but I don't think for anyone, either elected members or officers, it's a raging priority at the moment to start sorting that out, because I suspect it will be quite messy and could take quite a length of time. It would probably be, I think Councillor Hands was alluding to this, might be the sort of job that we should set out at the start of an administration to try and tidy it up, because it undoubtedly will take a bit of time. That would be certainly my view.
Thank you for that, Councillor Duff. Okay, any further questions? Have we got any comments? No. Okay, you've got the recommendations. It's 1 notes, 2 considers, and 3 considers. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item number 12. That's on page 107. It's Tayside Contract Central Production Unit. The inclusion of Perth and Kinross Council. That's a good news story, because it will save this council money. You've got the reports by Mark Armstrong, but I'd also like to thank Pete Morton. The recommendations are there. Any questions, Councillor Miles?
It's a comment.
Okay, I'll just stick to questions at the moment. Any questions? Okay, we'll go to comments. Councillor Miles.
Yes, it's just if anyone's ever visited the Central Production Unit for Tayside Contracts, it's quite an impressive site, and I would urge anyone that wishes to see it take the chance to visit, because if you're like me, you will be very impressed by the efficiency of that unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Okay, any further comments? I believe a good news story for the council that Perth and Ross are coming on board. The recommendations are 1 agrees and 2 is to note. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Go to item number 13, Tay-Cities Region deal, and it's the audit, page 110. Reports by Vivian Smith. And I'd also like to thank Mark Davidson. You've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Any comments? No. Recommendation is just to note the recommendations. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll go to 14 is the possible exclusion of public and press. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
John, Sandra, could you stop recording the live stream, please?